Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of the first season of Daredevil Born Again, which is currently on Disney Plus for your viewing pleasure. This show has 9 episodes of Daredevil goodness for all of you to enjoy, and it is the 13th TV show to be a part of the MCU, also known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, produced by Marvel Studios, and it stars Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, Daredevil, Vincent D'Onofrio, Deborah Ann Wool, Eldon Hansen, Michael Giovanni, Clark Johnson, John Bernthal, and many, many more. Following the cancellation of Daredevil in 2018 on Netflix, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio reprised their roles for Marvel Studio, and this started production in 2021. A new Daredevil series entered development actually in 2022, early in 2022, with a writing team that was initially replaced in the middle of filming this first season. This show was greenlit right off the bat for 2 seasons on Disney Plus, and I guess Kevin Feige and the higher ups over there, they were looking at it and like, nah, nah, we're not gonna go that route. The initial plan for this show, it was gonna have a lighter tone. It was gonna be more episodic than what we got this season. And you can honestly tell, and I think this season suffered from that. You can kind of see that this show was a Frankenstein monster. It was two different shows going on here. And they did the best they could to give us something worth watching. Now, overall, I enjoyed Daredevil Born Again. Was it just balls to the wall action, super exciting, fun, bubbly Marvel property? No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was a crime drama. It was Law and Order set in the MCU, and quite honestly, I wasn't mad at it. Did a couple of episodes drag? Yes, they did. These are 9 episodes, and I would say maybe 5 of them were like, oh, yeah. They were kind of, but they weren't horrible, because you can take something from every episode and be happy with. Like, it will be a scene here or a performance here. Certain things happen throughout the show that made you enjoy it overall. Not, you didn't get an episode where you was like, oh my god, I'm not watching this anymore. I never felt that way about Daredevil Born Again. Now, I can see where a lot of people who probably didn't watch the first run of Daredevil on Netflix and just jumping in to this Disney Plus version, this Marvel version, and be like completely lost, because this picks up essentially right after the Marvel show. I mean, not the Marvel, but the Netflix show went off, after it was canceled. But Daredevil Born Again began several years after the events of what happened back in 2018 on Netflix. So it is a spiritual sequel to that show. And it takes place a year after Matt Murdock stopped being Daredevil. He stopped his vigilante ways. So we're getting, going into this show, you kind of notice. Now, the first episode, it started off with a bang because he was still Daredevil at that point. And after, spoilers, Foggy was killed, he stopped being Daredevil. And that was another example of how this show kind of twisted and turned, because Paige and Foggy were not in the initial show. They weren't a part of the show. And so when the new showrunners came aboard and rewrote and reshot a lot of this show. They brought back for Froggy. They brought back Paige. It's Karen Page. So it was kind of shoehorned in a way, but at the same time they made it work throughout this season. In the first season, Matt Murdock continues to fight for justice as a lawyer, while former crime boss Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, is elected mayor of New York City, putting the pair on a collision course. If if there's anything I take away from this show, is Charlie Cox's portrayal as Matt Murdock and Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal as Wilson Fisk. They are so similar, and this was set up in the Netflix shows, how they're the perfect adversary for one another because they are the same. They are constantly at odds at one another because they're both driven. They're both kind of hampered by their. Well, we know that Matt has a disability, but I guess you could say Wilson Fisk has a disability as well. And they find a way to navigate through this world just by different means. Wilson Fisk navigates by criminal activity, by being violent, by being this murderous villain that he is. Matt Murdock navigates through the world trying to bring justice to his little part of the universe here in Hell's Kitchen, New York. He's trying his best as an attorney, and when that doesn't work, he's Daredevil. When the system doesn't work, Daredevil does. So he does what he can in that regards, and Wilson Fisk is going to do everything he can to get everything that he wants. And I loved how this season showed these two just parallel to one another. Both of them are going through a change this season. Daredevil has put up his costume, or I should say Matt Murdock put up his costume. He's no longer Daredevil. He's trying to do everything by the book. And you have Wilson Fisk, who's no longer Kingpin, and he's running for mayor. And now there's a lot of backstory there that I'm not going to get into because I think Marvel kind of fumbled the ball with Kingpin. He showed up in Hawkeye, which was cool. I actually enjoyed Hawkeye, this series, and it was cool that he popped up in that. But the Echo series was so bad. it was so bad, and he was the main antagonist in that show, and it set up his run for mayor, but nobody watched that show. And I watched the show, and I still was kind of taken aback when this season first kicked off. I was like, oh, he's going to be mayor? Why would they vote him mayor? But then I thought about the events of Echo, unfortunately, because I decided that I would never think about that show again once it was over. But neither here nor there. But they kind of fumbled the ball with his character. Wish it was a little more backstory as to him getting to this point. But what the show does do good is show them on this path throughout the season, how they're struggling to kind of stay on this different path that they've decided to take. And not so much for Wilson Fisk, because it's Wilson Fisk. You know that he's dirty. It's something nefarious going on within his inner workings. So it's not cut and dry like he's turned a new leaf, but he's putting on this show. And both of these characters are going through an existential crisis, and it's cool to see it because they both are pretty much going through this at the exact same time. And finally it comes to a head when we get to the end of this season. I thought the show did a good job of doing that. I was upset that we didn't get more White Tiger. Now, I know they had some things that happened why we didn't get White Tiger in the real world, because the actor who portrayed him, Kamar de la Reyes, I believe that's how you say his name. God rest his soul. He passed away. He passed away while filming Daredevil Born Again. He filmed all his parts and everything. It what makes his um contribution to this show so heavy is the fact that he knew he was sick, and he took this role and fought for this role so that he can kind of leave something to his family, financially and legacy wise. So that was the reason why he took on his role and gave it his all. And everybody said on set, when you listen to interviews and everything, nobody knew he was sick, but you could tell he was sick. But he gave it his all, for the little brief time that we had of him on the show. But White Tiger is a very cool character in the comics. I read a few comics with him involved, that character involved. And so I was excited when they announced that he was going to be in this season. I'm like, oh man, right? They're going to put White Tiger in it? All right, cool. But we didn't get much of him. But the actor, Kamar, he did really, really well. And I'm not just saying that because the man passed on. He really did a good job in the role with the little time that he had on the show. I don't know if they killed that character off because of what happened to Kamar de los Reyes, but I see why. Story wise, I see why they did it, but they could have did that with anybody. They didn't have to do it the White Tiger. But they are setting up something bigger down the line with his niece. If you are familiar with the comics, she takes on the mantle of White Tiger after him. So that is set up, but she's super young in this show. She's like, I don't know, 12, 13. I don't know how old she is, but she's young, so it would have made more sense if it was kind of like 17, 18-ish, around that area. Then we could have, threw that mantle on her, but we have a while to wait before that character comes back. Muse, the character of Muse, who was set up, I don't know. I went into this knowing nothing about Muse. I did research before the show premiered when they announced that Muse was going to be part of it, and I saw online how people were losing their minds, like, oh my God, it's Muse, and I'm like, who is Muse? I haven't read a issue with Muse, and so I did some research on the character, and I'm like, okay, he's interesting, disturbing, very disturbing. Let's see how Disney rocks with this, because he's a serial killer who kills his victims, drains his victims of blood, and paints these murals with the victim's blood. And so I was like, okay, they're gonna do that, and they did. They did. I thought that was a very cool little story point to go in, but it was kind of fumbled. It wasn't really flushed out much, It was thrown out there. It was kind of like villain of the week vibes, even though he appeared in I want to say about 3, maybe 4 episodes this season, but it just felt like villain of the week. Once we finally got the reveal of Muse, I think maybe 2 episodes really focused on Muse, and I'm giving it 2. I know 1 whole episode for certain. The second one was like the butt end of it, so they didn't do much with him, and I kind of get it, because that's a disturbing character. There's not much you can do with that character, other than see him run around and drain people of blood, and paint with said blood. So I know it wasn't a lot there, and you still had a lot of story there. You still had a lot of meat on the bones there with Wilson Fisk, with Matt Murdock, and him going through this, crisis and of self, and so on and so forth. So it kind of made sense, but it just wasn't enough of Muse for me to get excited about. Speaking of not getting excited about, but I did at the end, and it was the Punisher. the one thing that came out of the Netflix era of Marvel shows, The Punisher was the best thing. And in particular, John Bernthal's portrayal of the Punisher. This dude is Frank Castle. He gets it. He is that character. He is perfect. That's why they brought him back. That's why he's officially a part of the MCU now. Because you couldn't recast him. Who's gonna do better than that? and he can still play the role. So it's like it don't make sense to recast that character. He is so awesome as the Punisher. Didn't get enough of him. We got 1.25 episodes of the Punisher, and every time he was on the screen, I was super excited. He elevated the show. When he popped up earlier in the season and that was it, I was like, really? They made this big old brouhaha that John Bernthal is back and this, that, and the third, and he popped up for one scene, and you didn't see him anymore for about 4 episodes. I was like, man, they really played me on this. They played me on this. Oh, but they made up for it in that final episode. My God. I mean, he is the Punisher. I mean, straight up. That is the Punisher. What Thomas Jane did in that film, I think, in 2009 or whatever that was nothing. What the late, great Ray Stevenson did in Punisher Warzone a few years after that, even though I enjoyed it, a lot of people didn't like that version of Punisher, but I actually liked it. But that doesn't hold a stick to John Bernthal as the Punisher. I can't wait to see them do more with him as that character in the MCU. They can find a way. He doesn't probably have to get his own standalone film, but you can put a Disney Plus show or a Hulu show with the Punisher, make it gritty, because obviously Disney Plus is not scared with the blood and all that there, because this show proves that. This show proves they're not scared of the violence. This was a very hard R of violence in this show. But yeah, I love John Bernthal. He did an excellent job. The characters that I really didn't care for was the actress not the actress, but the character of Heather, who is Matt Murdock's love interest throughout this season. She's a psychiatrist. She has a client list that includes Wilson Fisk and his wife, who includes Muse. And so she is not a villain. She's not a bad girl. She just has bad clients, So, but I didn't like her character at all. Her character was so pointless to me and so aggravating to me. I just did not like it. I didn't connect with her at all. Didn't connect with the direction they went with it, especially at the end. At the end, I was like, this is a complete betrayal of that character. Even though I wasn't feeling her, but what they did to the character at the end, I was like, what is this? This is a turn. This made no sense. But I know we're getting a season 2 and it's set up. A lot of this plot line is still ongoing. We'll see in season 2, but it was just aggravating. I don't like her character. Didn't like it at all. While we on the subjects of things I didn't like the pacing of this season. 9 episodes. It was such an odd number, and it's just uneven, and the show was uneven. And I know I spoke on it at the beginning that they made a lot of changes. They tried to fit different stories into an existing material that they have already filmed and everything. They were just trying to piece it together and get it back on track. You felt it. You felt the change in like the last 3 episodes. I can tell that this is what these new showrunners are going. This is the direction they're going, and it got much better the last 3 episodes. I was completely engaged the last 3 episodes, and so I'm excited for the second season because they're They're in charge of the whole thing now. So they didn't have to correct or course correct for the majority of this season, like they well, for the second season that they did for the first season. So that's encouraging, and I did enjoy the last 3 episodes of this season in comparisons to the beginning of this season. But overall, I did enjoy it. It was a good watch. This show, or at least this season, was bookend to me. I think the first episode was excellent. A good setup. You know, it promised a lot. It didn't really deliver in the middle, but once we got towards the end, it did start to deliver on the promise that we got in that first episode. So overall, it gets a passing grade. Daredevil Born Again, currently on Disney Plus, season 1, gets a letter grade of a C plus. Yeah, it was good, and I'm encouraged moving forward. I'm not, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Second season come, I'm like, the first season wasn't all that good. I ain't worried about the second season. No, I am surprisingly super excited for this second season because I know it's going to get better because it's set up better. It's set up really cool. That last episode, it promises it. I mean, it swears on his mother's grave that we're in for some real good stuff out of Daredevil Born Again. So I'm super excited. But I would love to know, what did you think of Daredevil Born Again season 1 on Disney Plus? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Do you think it's up there with the Netflix Daredevil show from 10 years ago? Or do you think it's a far cry from that? I would love to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of season 1, Daredevil Born Again. I want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.